If you're a language learner, you'll know what a CFR level is. It's a language test that tells you what your level is. And as much as these levels can be useful to put on a resume or to get a working visa, they are dreadfully imperfect. Not only that, but they stunt your learning. So we'll not be talking about whether they're useful or not, because they are useful. We'll be talking about all the good reasons to reject them and why rejecting them can seriously benefit your language learning. Because there are ways to approach a language with a different philosophy for much better results. It comes down to the difference between training and education. The CFR is a training manual for a standardized test, and as such, it's a point of view. It's not the truth, it's a truth, it's one truth, and we don't have to function within this one truth. I see many people believe in language levels like a religion, as if it was inseparable from language. You start learning, therefore you belong to a level, whether you want it or not. And just like certain foods were pushed by the food industry, we shouldn't forget that language testing represents millions of dollars annually. And you can't organize testing if you don't have levels. So there's a strong financial incentive from multiple parties to keep CFR levels alive. Language schools, but also tutors, appear more legitimate when they mention CFR levels, which makes, of course, for better business. And obviously, testing centers, language testing centers, make good money all the way to publishers of language books. So there's a whole chain that depends on these language levels, and a good reason why CFR will not go away anytime soon. The way I teach French, there's just one program. I teach the French you'll need, and it's an education about the logic of French. You see, the mechanics of French. I personally reject the CFR levels because if I was to teach like that, it would be less effective, it would be a lot more costly for the customer. Under a certain angle, it would be really, really fake. I would know as a teacher that we're producing fakeness. I realize it's a strong word, but there's no other way to say it. I would be in a position of seeing the complexity of the matter, seeing the complexity of language, and selling a simplified product that satisfies a bureaucratic norm. I really wouldn't feel comfortable doing this, not just financially, but as a linguist, I would find it too fake. When we accept CFR language levels, it means we submit to an outside, one-size-fits-all authority. This in itself is risible, because it doesn't take into account the human being, or even outside reality, or even the language for that matter, because the language doesn't care about levels. I have a master's in German. I might be more than capable to teach in a high school. I might be fantastically qualified, fantastic level of German, but utterly useless to be a summer camp coach for native Germans. I have a master's degree, I can teach it, I'm a C1 in some cases, but I'm also an A1 in other cases. It depends who you are and what the circumstances are and what your uses of the language are. That's my example of high school for L2 learners versus a summer camp for native speakers of German, in which I would be an A1. So we shouldn't all be judged by one standard, simply because it makes no sense beyond the very limited logic of the CEFR testing system. It's a bit like having an athletic body, versus placing in a bodybuilding competition. Two worlds can coexist. You can be athletic but not qualified to place in a bodybuilding competition. So I don't think that bodybuilding standards should have authority over aesthetics necessarily, so which is what we're seeing in language learning. Or it's like getting a clean bill of health from your doctor, or considering that we can push health much further by choosing a very specific diet or lifestyle that the doctor can't measure. We don't have to accept the medical boxes. We can transcend them. CEFR measures general linguistic ability under standardized conditions, but real life requires domain-specific competence. I personally teach French with the adult in mind and what they'll likely need during the average year in a francophone environment. Not survival sentences, but good quality French, advanced French even, but always keeping in mind practical reality. My French course is for the adult learner who will likely speak slowly at first, no problem there. They want to pronounce clearly and be sure that they have all the tools that might be thrown at them at one point or other in a French-speaking environment. It's much more organic and person-centered, human-centered. It's you and your learning and what might happen to you in reality. Because when you're abroad, you'll see that there's no such things as levels when you have to interact. Everything is jumbled up. And funnily enough, when I ran this idea in AI, in Gemini answered, this is why your one program, speaking of my one program, is actually more respectful of the individual. I'd not thought of that. It's more respectful because I'm not teaching a level. And apparently I'm providing a complete toolkit, which is what I want to do. Provide the French, the complete toolkit, and then you learn it first and then you accelerate your speaking later. The ladder system of the CEFR is bureaucratic, no doubt about that. But when bureaucracy interferes with personal growth in the physical reality, there is a loss for the learner, and we can see why other fields of learning don't accept it. It's interesting to see what other fields of learning do, but that somehow language learning does accept. Take as an example a long-term practitioner of martial arts going to a new dojo. They might tell the martial arts expert, the head of the dojo, the master, I've been doing martial arts for 10 years, I don't need to do basic drills anymore, I'm looking for something more advanced. The head of the dojo, the master, might answer, rightly so, well, I don't know this to be a fact. You tell me you're good. What's more, you seem to misunderstand the function of basic drills, and you seem to have no humility, which strongly contradicts the idea of learning, which in turn would strongly suggest that your own advanced learning in kung fu, in karate or whatever, is standing on very shaky ground. And I think the same thing about languages too. In high-level environments such as the army or sports, the coach or trainer will have one curriculum, one philosophy, one training program. They don't care how many battles you've been through. And I don't think language schools or coaches or tutors should care about whether a person has a B1 or a B2. I don't think they should trust it. And I think it's the way languages should be taught also. One program to cover all levels, because I know that a person with a B2 at a certain language will still be surprised by some elements of the A1 level. You might be a B2 and still be surprised at the A1 level. Even if it's the foundations of pronunciation, you will be surprised at certain elements of the pronunciation, A1 level. I've personally seen university professors give conferences in English, even teach English as non-natives. They might have great functional English for everyday interactions and great intellectual English for their papers, and yet I might not understand them properly because their prosody is off. And this sort of thing happens between native speakers also, you know. A few days ago I was watching a program with my wife about 1940 soldiers that were traumatized by the war, and on the psychiatric ward the doctors and the patients had this odd old-fashioned English accent. I couldn't properly understand them. It's a sort of radio accent you'd hear in 1940s programs. I couldn't properly understand them, and neither could my wife. You know, not the words, because I understood the word, but the intent behind the sentences. And it was sort of, state your name for the record. My name is Albert. You know, they spoke in that sort of way. We can see that this patient is... It's very, you know, that sort of shaky up and down. You know, the intonation was never in the right place. You couldn't quite work out if it was a statement, a question, or the intention behind the message. Go on, tell us what you feel. That, you know, that sort of thing. And so I was telling my wife, it's amazing because here we are, two native speakers of English. We can't properly understand these people. We can understand the words. If we looked away from the TV screen, we wouldn't properly understand the interaction. The very last thing I'll say about CFR levels is that if you've been told that you're A2, B1, B2, you'll start to think of language in terms of levels, like a staircase or a ladder, and you'll limit your own self, and your view on languages will be less fluid. You'll start to look for solutions where there are none. You'll start to see language in a less organic way, and it will be less functional and practical, precisely because you're now in the pursuit of advanced language. and that your foundations might be really shaky. The person who looks for a B2 or a C1 course is usually in search for elaborate words or phrases. They have this view that somewhere out there's all these elaborate phrases that B2 or C1 level users use. So their whole view of language is off. They misunderstand what they're meant to do next. The fact is that different people have different needs in language, so I think we should reject the generalized testing machine and call it what it is. It's one reality, it's not the reality. If you're a retiree going to France, you'll need a different type of French than if you were dependent on close and precise interactions in a new workplace in France, or even in a romantic relationship with a French-speaking person. You see, your needs are completely different. These are different needs entirely. My solution for language learning is don't think in terms of levels. It will stunt your progress. If it's for a visa, why not? If it's for growth, you'll just need one program. That covers it all. And if you want to learn more about what I do, head off to OuiCommunicate.com. You'll find your first 10 classes absolutely free. Try it, see if you like it. I hope to see you very soon. My name is Chris. Bye.